Salutatis. So we are talking about new adjectives this chapter. This is just the introduction. I'm going to take you through all three really quickly, and then we'll do specific ones later in second set of notes. So let's talk about these three different kinds of adjectives, one of which you already know, and then the two new ones, comparative and superlative. So I'll probably refer to these as PCS adjectives when I'm referring to all three: positive, comparative, and superlative. So the first kind, first thing here, the 3 degrees of an adjective. So one adjective can take on sort of 3 different forms, even in English. So we have the positive degree, which is the plain form of an adjective. That means it is just descriptive, nothing else. It has no other job other than to describe something. So here's an example. In English, we have happy. In Latin, it's laetus. You learn this word right off the bat in Latin 1. The second degree of adjective is the comparative degree. It's used to say there's more of an adjective in one noun compared to another. So this is where you're comparing things, hence comparative degree adjective. So in English, this would go from happy in the positive to happier in the comparative. So and let's look at the Latin difference. We go from laetus to laetior. Okay, ior in the Latin, and adding a very similar ear in the English, which is kind of nice. It's a little bit similar. So the third degree of adjectives is superlative. Now this is used to say there's the most of a certain adjective. So happy in the positive, happier in the comparative, and happiest in the superlative degree. Now let's look at the difference in the Latin. It got a lot longer, but something to point out, you'll see a lot of times in superlatives a double letter, right? So in this one we have a double S. Sometimes you have a double R or a double L, but the double letter is really helpful in superlatives. So laetus, laetior, and laetissimus. The longer word means that it's the most, the highest degree of adjective. So that's kind of helpful for us too. So in depth, a little bit more. So the positive degree adjective, this is the one you're used to. That means it's review. So this is the one you'll be able to find in the dictionary. So when you look up an adjective, this is exactly what you're going to see. And as far as the meaning of a positive degree adjective, that's the meaning that the dictionary gives you as well. So this is sort of the straightforward, normal adjective that you're used to. And this part here is just a tiny review. You have 2 types of positive degree adjectives: first, second declension, and third declension. You talked about these in Latin too. So first, second declension adjectives use first and second declension noun endings. That seems logical. Just like third declension adjectives use third declension noun endings. Also logical. So here's an example, a couple of examples. We've got first, second declension adjective. Frigidus aum means cold. And that us aum tells me it's first, second declension. Then down here we have brevis is a, which is a third declension adjective, and you can see that is a is what tells me that. And it just means short. Nothing added, nothing changed from what we would expect brevis to be. Now the comparative, we have something that you can't just look up in the dictionary. You're going to have to add something to it, to what is in the dictionary, to the positive degree. So this will include or end in the letters I-O-R. So ior is going to either be in the word or at the end of the word. It could be either one, depending on what case it is, what function it holds in the sentence. No matter what, these comparative adjectives always use third declension endings. It doesn't matter what type of adjective it is in the positive degree. These comparative adjectives will always use third declension endings. So there are a couple ways to translate these. There's some basic ways. The first and second are basic, and the other two are just kind of nice ways to polish things up a little bit. So translate by adding the following to the positive degree adjectives, or to those translations of the positive degree. So really basic, you can add or ear, but sometimes that doesn't sound right. Like the adjective annoying, for instance. You aren't going to say annoyinger. It just doesn't sound right. So we would say instead, more annoying. So imagine the blank here is just some adjective, positive degree adjective you'd like to use. We could also do rather annoying or too annoying. Those are your comparative translation options. So in Latin, we've got fregidor. We have the ior there at the end, and that means we add the in the English. Okay, so fregidus becomes fregerior in the Latin. So in English, cold to colder. So it's fairly similar. Molestiores is more annoying. This ior in the middle on this one tells me to put more there. So ior, more, if that helps. So pulchriorem is kind of an ugly one. We have ior there in the middle again. So I could add something like rather beautiful or even too beautiful if I felt like it. Last one, we have the superlative degree adjectives. This will include an isim in most cases before the ending. You can't just end a Latin word with isim. So notice the dash is before for the stem, and then you need a dash after this little addition so that you can make room for an actual ending, because there has to be both a stem and an ending with these this isim there in the middle. So if it's not isim, sometimes isim didn't sound right. So it could also be adding a rim or a limb to that, and I'll show you where that's going to happen, and we'll get in more in depth with that next week. So first of all, superlative degree adjectives always use first, second declension adjective endings. So that means even if it's a third declension adjective that you're making superlative, it will still end in first, second declension endings. The consistency is nice with the endings, but it's kind of annoying once you realize I'm dealing with a third declension adjective. I should have a third declension ending. But that's not how it works in superlative. Imagine that this isim sort of starts a whole new pattern. So you have stem, isim, and then first, second declension adjective ending. Okay. So a couple ways to translate these as well. The first two here are the basic kinds. So by adding the following to the positive degree translation, you can have a nice superlative meaning. Okay, so imagine that it's happy, okay, so it would be happiest, or maybe slow, so slowest. Adding that est in the English makes it superlative. Some words, like I said, like annoying, don't sound right, so you'd have to say most annoying instead of annoyingest. Also, you could say very annoying. Whatever works for your sentence is totally fine. A nice little word to give you. This word omnium could actually alert you to the fact that there might be a superlative coming up, because they kind of go together. You could have a superlative and then omnium with it, and that means of all. So if we had frigidissima omnium, it would be the coldest of all. Okay, so using those in conjunction can be kind of fun and helpful for you to really make your point. All right, so let's look at our examples. Fregadissima is coldest. I took the English cold, added my superlative piece, the est. You could also translate it as very cold if you wanted to do that instead. That's a nice polished translation. But notice the double letter here. We have a double S because that's what this adjective called for. Down here, queremos, we have the double R, so that sort of alerts us, hey, this is superlative. notice it has first, second declension adjective endings on it, just like this one did up here. Both of them do. So if ever your stem, like aker, ends in an R, then you're going to use rem. They didn't like the sound of carissimos. It was too much. And there's no need to do that if you could just add something simpler. So the double R is still there. So this would be translated, this aker means sharp. So akeremos, sharpest, or very sharp. Down here I gave you an example where you might see limb. So facilis, it means easy. So if we want to make that superlative, the stem ends in an L, facil. Okay, see that there? And that tells me I need to add the limb, not an isim. Limb would just sound better. So facilimum omnium, we have the easiest for facilimum, and then the omnium tells us of all. So that's kind of nice. Easiest of all. All right, so I managed to do that in 11 minutes. Whew, last time I did this video, it was 16 minutes. So you're welcome. So that's it for now. It's just the introduction, and we'll get more in depth next week. All right, straw out.